let's grow together. Let's please welcome Reverend Martin Preston.
We're going to be spending the next few minutes thinking about forgiveness, forgiving others, wondering if others can forgive us, trying to forgive ourselves. Now, forgiveness is hard work, and some people find it so difficult that they don't even try. But every great spiritual tradition has spent a lot of time and effort to convince us that one of the greatest keys to a happy, fulfilled life is the ability to forgive. Now, forgiveness is one of those things that may be less of the moment and more of a progression. That is, it may take us several tries to actually, honestly, totally forgive. And the Apostle Peter famously addressed this issue. We read in the book of Matthew, "Then Peter came to Jesus and asked, 'Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother when he sins against me? Up to 7 times?' And Jesus answered, 'I tell you, not 7 times, but 70 times 7. Well, on the calculator, that works out to 490 times. But more about that in a moment. First, a story, a true story. On Friday, December 20th, 1974, kids all across America were thinking of the fun that they would have on their Christmas break, including 5th grader Chris Carrier. But Chris's holiday would be filled with joy, not be filled with joy, but rather it would be rocked with terror. On the walk home from school that afternoon, Chris was 2 doors away from his house when a strange man walked up to him and introduced himself as one of his father's friends. And the man told Chris that he was throwing a surprise party for his dad and asked if he wanted to help with the decorations. Chris eagerly agreed and hopped into the back of the man's motorhome. The stranger drove past the Miami city limits sign, and reaching the outskirts of town, he stopped, pulled out a map, and asked Chris to find a particular road. And while Chris busied himself with the search, the man excused himself to get something. Moments later, as Chris leaned over the map, he felt a sharp stabbing pain in his back, and he turned to see the man standing over him holding an ice pick, and the man proceeded to stab the young boy in the chest several times. And through his pain, Chris pled with his abductor. If the man would only stop hurting him, he wouldn't tell anybody. Chris asked the man why he was doing this to him, and the only answer the man gave was that Chris's dad had cost him a lot of money. About an hour later, the man pulled the vehicle over and led Chris into the Everglades. And he told Chris to wait, that his dad was coming to pick him up. Of course, Chris's father wasn't coming. He didn't even know where his son was. And it would be 6 terrible days in the wilderness before a hunter would find Chris. And the little boy was not only hungry and weak, but he'd been stabbed several times. He'd even been shot in the head, although he had no memory of it. The bullet left Chris blind in his left eye. Miraculously, though, he suffered no damage to his brain. The worst part of the whole ordeal in Chris's mind was that his captor was still on the loose. Police sketch artists put together a composite of what the assailant might look like based on Chris's description. Chris's father and uncle immediately recognized the man in the drawing. He was David McAllister, an ex-convict who had been hired by the family to look after a great uncle who had suffered a stroke. And McAllister had been fired for drinking on the job. And even though a motorhome and a pistol matching the caliber of Chris's wound were found at McAllister's home, forensics those days were not what they are today. There was no physical evidence, and McAllister was never brought to trial for the crime he committed. Chris had a rough adolescence. At the stage of life when one is most concerned about one's appearance, he was acutely aware of his disfigured face. A sports fan, he couldn't even play his favorite games because of the permanent injuries he had sustained. Put yourself in Chris's shoes. What would you have done with your life? What kind of revenge might you have sought? We'll get back to Chris a little later because there is more to the story. But meanwhile, back to St. Peter's question. How many times are we going to have to forgive? What if someone wronged us and we forgave him and then he wronged us again? Do we really have to keep forgiving? Under the circumstances, the words of Jesus may sound cruel. Forgive 70 times 7, 490 times. That's certainly enough to exhaust your patience. But it gets worse. In Aramaic, which is the language that Jesus spoke, his words are recorded as follows. I do not say to you up to 7 times, but up to 70 times 7, 70 times 7, 7 times. That's a tongue twister. 70 times 7, 7 times. Now 70 times 7 times 7 equals 3,430. In other words, Jesus was saying an indefinite amount of times. Do any of us have that kind of patience? And does anyone deserve to be forgiven that many times? C.S. Lewis once wrote, everyone says forgiveness is a lovely idea until they have something to forgive. Well, why is forgiveness so hard? Well, we're often reluctant to let go of our anger. If we still feel harmed in the now, even years after we were actually harmed, we frequently continue to feel angry. And it's difficult, if not impossible, to forgive someone with whom we're still angry. But if it's allowed to become chronic, anger, if it's allowed to boil without being channeled to accomplish something worthwhile, anger can cause us far more harm than good. It may be difficult to forgive because we want to satisfy our sense of justice. And even if we're not angry, if we believe our offender doesn't deserve our forgiveness, we may find ourselves withholding it. And to release our anger and to forgive our offender may feel like letting them get away with something, getting away without being punished, especially if no other punishment is forthcoming. But forgiveness has nothing to do with absolving a criminal from his crime. It has everything to do with relieving oneself of the burden of being a victim, letting go of the pain, and transforming oneself from victim to survivor. But we wish to harm as we've been harmed. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth often feels satisfying. But remember the words of Gandhi, an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. And if we lack the power to inflict actual harm on our offender, harboring anger may feel like the second best option. Holding a grudge can, in a certain sense, feel good. It may be difficult to forgive because they haven't apologized. It's easier to forgive if someone's apologized, but again, remember that forgiveness is not for the offender's benefit. Forgiveness is for our own well-being. And when someone commits an injustice, we often cease to see or believe that they could be capable of any good whatsoever. We tend to stereotype those who harm us, diminishing them from full-fledged human beings and expressions of God into actually being our offenders, and just our offenders. And this enables us to refuse the possibility that they have positive characteristics or that they have the capacity to do good. So, what does it really mean to forgive? Forgiveness involves recognizing that the person who harmed us is more than just the person who harmed us. The offender is, whether we want to acknowledge it or not, a full-fledged human being, an expression, a manifestation of God, whose being isn't defined by their decision to harm us in some way. At its core, forgiveness is an acknowledgement that a person who's harmed us still has the capacity for good. Forgiveness requires us to see our offender not as evil, but as confused. So confused that they would actually believe that they're harming us, and by doing so, somehow they could be happier, although they almost certainly haven't consciously realized the foolishness of that idea. But forgiveness requires us, you and me, to let go of our anger, to let go of our desire to punish or teach a lesson, to let go of our need to retaliate, to let go of the notion that by choosing to forgive an offense, we're in some way condoning an unjust action committed against us or committing an injustice ourselves. Letting go of the need for an apology, letting go of the need to try to force the offender to change. In forgiving others their transgressions against us, we are ultimately seeking to free ourselves. Forgiving means that we can move on, healed from the hurt that's been done to us. Well, how does forgiving others benefit us? Forgiving others is the only way to break a perpetual cycle of resentment, frustration, and violence, whether physical or mental. And there are people who carry their grudges to their graves, and there are even some who try to make their grudges live on even after their death. Families gathered around a deathbed have often heard things from dying people such as, "Promise me you'll never forgive Uncle Harold for what he did. Promise that you'll never speak to him or have anything to do with him or his family ever again." And I suppose that's how the infamous Hatfield and McCoy feud lasted for generations. Someone from one family did something awful to someone from the other family, and the war was on. And as the years passed, and as the feud escalated, probably no one really remembered the original act that started it all. And yet, the cancer of hatred, violence, and killing spread through the generations, leaving behind a legacy of misery and death. Well, in recent years, the Hatfield and McCoy feud has formally ended, with both families sharing annual get-togethers. Unfortunately, the tendency for a feud to outlive its origins continues. Look at the Middle East. Forgiveness does not change the past, but it does enlarge the future. In order to forgive, we must let go of our anger. If we continue to hold on to anger, it often leaks out. It leaks out and impacts others who've committed no crime against us. It's that old thing about being dressed down by the boss, But you can't retaliate to your boss, so you go home and take it out on your spouse, and your spouse takes it out on the kids, and the kids take it out on the family dog. And if your anger doesn't leak out against others, it will leak from your mind into your joints, your organs, right down to the cellular level. So we need to find the compassion to forgive. And to muster compassion for one who's harmed us, we must first believe that all people desire to be happy. And from that starting point, we must find a way to realize that our offender has simply gone off the rails in their pursuit of their own happiness. And so we must pity them as we would a misguided child. No matter how sophisticated a person may seem, how confident and wise and successful, how could an intent to harm arise from anything other than a delusion? And the question will naturally follow, are some people's crimes so heinous that they don't merit forgiveness? Parents who've abused us, children who rebelled against us, spouses who've abandoned us, friends who've betrayed us, strangers who harmed us or our loved ones, or even tyrants who killed our families. Can one forgive a person without forgiving their actions? Well, if you find yourself holding a grudge against someone who's harmed you, find a way to forgive them, because for you to become the kind of person who can forgive them will not only benefit you, but ultimately may have the power to transform the life of the person you're forgiving. Not always, but sometimes. And if it does, in forgiving them, you're not only setting yourself free, but you're also contributing to something the world is desperately crying out for: peace. Marianne Williamson tells us, the practice of forgiveness is our most important contribution to the healing of the world. So, how to forgive? Well, Marianne Williamson again, the first step in forgiveness is the willingness to forgive. Now, we love to read stories about people who have responded to hatred with love, but when that very thing is demanded of us personally, our default too often seems to be anger, anguish, depression, self-righteousness, hatred, etc. Yet, study after study shows that one of the keys to longevity and good health is the ability to let go of past hurts. Want to live a long, happy life? Forgive the unforgivable. It really is the kindest thing you can do for yourself. Your offender may not deserve to be forgiven for all the pain and sadness and suffering inflicted on your life, but you deserve to be free of this evil. Realize that the hate you feel toward your adversary does not harm him or her in the slightest. Chances are your offender has gone on with life and hasn't given you another thought. As Nelson Mandela told us, resentment is like drinking poison and waiting for it to kill somebody. So here are 7 steps to forgiveness. You can use some or all. First, understand that the best revenge is to live a successful and happy life. Want to get even with someone who tried to destroy you? Show them and show yourself that the obstacles they tried to create were not enough to disable you or destroy you. In the words of Oscar Wilde, always forgive your enemies. Nothing annoys them so much. Secondly, realize that the second best revenge is to turn the evil into something good, to find the proverbial silver lining in the dark cloud. Think of your offender as someone who has helped you to grow. And even though unfortunate things happen to us, the best thing we can do is take those opportunities as tests that will either destroy or strengthen us. And remember, if you've been through something, if you have been through it, it didn't destroy you. So take what you learned and become a better person because of it. Third, look for the blessing. Make a list of all the good things that emerged as a result of this awful experience. You've probably focused long enough on the negative parts. Look at the problem from a completely new angle. Look at the positive side. I heard a man say that when he was growing up, no matter what kind of a mess he got into, his father would say, "It's okay. What have you learned?" Well, what if we went through life with that attitude? No matter what happened, what have I learned? Number 4, look for the helpers. Fred Rogers, TV's Mr. Rogers, related that as a little boy, he often became upset about catastrophes in the news, and his mother would tell him, "Look for the helpers." In your own nightmarish experience, think back to the people who helped you. The helpers are always there, but we don't always recognize them. Think about their kindness and unselfishness. Practice what you've learned from them. Fifth, be compassionate with yourself. As you try to move out of the dark dungeon of your old hurt, you may make mistakes. Forgive yourself. Be patient and kind to yourself. Emotional pain has a profound effect on the body. Give yourself time to heal, physically and emotionally. Eat well, rest, pray, meditate. Give yourself permission to feel the emotions and process them. Don't bottle up the pain. Sixth, learn that the Aramaic word for forgive literally means to untie. The fastest way to free yourself from someone who's wronged you is to forgive. Untie the bindings and loosen yourself from that person's ugliness. Your hatred has tied you to the person responsible for your pain. Your forgiveness enables you to start walking away from him or her and the pain. Forgiveness, once again, is for you and not for the other party. When you hold resentment toward another, you are bound to that person or condition by an emotional link that is stronger than steel. Forgiveness is the only way to dissolve that link and get free. And seventh, stop telling the story. How many times did you tell the story about how badly you were hurt and how horribly you were wronged? How many times a day do you think about the hurt? Well, the story is past tense. It's over and done with. But rehashing the story keeps you in bondage. It's far better to forgive because it's the kindest thing you can do for you and your friends and your family. Negativity is depressing and contagious, physically, mentally, spiritually, and emotionally. And in the process of doing our forgiveness work, we may not get it right the first time. We may make mistakes. And Jesus realized that too, which is why he talked about 70 times 7. If you attend our center regularly, you know that on the first Sunday of the month, we have a potluck right after the service. And we have wonderful volunteers who work hard to make them very special. I'm not involved in them one way or another, which may be why they're special. But today's potluck day, and I have asked them if they would change things up just a bit. Instead of our usual selection of goodies, I asked if we could have a nice bowl of battery acid and some mixed salad greens with salmonella and E. coli, and some cherries in cyanide sauce. Well, luckily for you, the volunteers turned me down. No one would want that. And yet, when we're full of anger, resentment, grudges, and when we withhold forgiveness, we are gorging ourselves on a poisonous buffet. And even worse, for many of us, it's an all-you-can-eat buffet. We're literally making ourselves sick by choosing to devour that which destroys, to ingest that which we can't digest, to consume that which will consume us. Here's another thing. Cortisol is a hormone that metabolizes fat from all over your body to enable a quick response to stress. And after the stress ends, cortisol doesn't put the fat back to where it came from. It just puts it where it's most easily accessible, which happens to be around the waist. Now, think about that for a moment. Cortisol draws upon body fat to deal quickly with stress. And after the stress has passed, cortisol deposits the fat around the waist. So, if your waistline is expanding, maybe it's not all the leftover Halloween candies or the giant pumpkin spice lattes. Maybe it's the stress of carrying around resentment and anger. The solution? Try forgiveness. Who knew that what's good for your soul would also be good for your waistline? A few minutes ago, we left 10-year-old Chris Carrier as a traumatized child, disfigured for life, without resolution from the justice system. And it would have been very easy for him to allow what happened to him to ruin his life forever. But at around the age of 13, Chris began to change. He was no longer consumed with animosity, revenge, or self-pity. He realized he couldn't stay angry forever. And 22 years passed, during which time the statute of limitations ran out on the crime. And then one day came a life-changing phone call. At the other end of the line was a policeman who said that David Callister, the perpetrator, now blind from glaucoma and bedridden in a nursing home, had admitted to being Chris's captor. The next day, accompanied by a friend, Chris went to the facility where McAllister was to meet the man who had changed his life forever. And Chris's recollection of that encounter should challenge all of us. Chris said, "When I first spoke to David McAllister, he was rather callous. I suppose, being blind and not knowing who I was, he thought I was just another police officer. The friend who had accompanied me asked him a few simple questions that led to him admitting that, yes, he had abducted and tortured me. And my friend then asked, 'Did you ever wish that you could tell that young man that you were sorry for what you did?' And McAllister answered emphatically, 'I wish I could.' That," said Chris, "was when I introduced myself to him. Unable to see, he grabbed my hand and told me that he was sorry for what he had done. In return, I offered him my forgiveness and friendship." And Chris meant what he said. He visited McAllister in the nursing home many more times. They each talked about their lives. And Chris shared how he had moved past the trauma and pain, how he had found faith, how he had found a reason to live. Chris said of his offender, he's never been able to live without memories and pain. And in that perspective, he has paid his price. He has served his time. Weeks later, the elderly kidnapper and attempted murderer died. But he died forgiven. Chris was doing what Jesus and Peter talked about 2,000 years ago. Jesus willingly forgave those who had scorned him the most and hurt him the deepest. And he called upon his followers to do the same. We find in the Gospel of Matthew, you have heard it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Imagine what our lives would look like if we gave that a try. So even if it takes 7 times, forgive. You've heard it said that if you don't forgive, whoever and whatever it is will occupy rent-free space in your mind. Even if it takes 70 times, forgive. To forgive is to set a prisoner free and discover that the prisoner was you. And even if it takes 70 times 7 tries, forgive. Because when you forgive, you love. And when you love, God's light shines upon you, and God's light shines from within you. And you're doing yourself and your world a big, big favor. Namaste. So nice having you with us today. From time to time, I like to share with you just little things that might come in handy for you. They're not related to today's topic at all, but just a little life story that might come in handy for you sometime down the road. So recently, I met someone who asked me, "Why don't you have any tattoos?" So I said, let me answer your question with one of my own. Would you put a bumper sticker on a Ferrari? So right now, I invite you to just get comfortable in your seat. Just relax. Take a deep breath or two. We're going to go within, so close your eyes, shut out any distractions, and let's spend these next few moments knowing the truth together. There is one life, one love, one law, one creative intelligence, operating as the universe and expressing as everything and everyone in it. Creation and evolution are the products of the mind of God, forever manifesting new wonders for the delight of spirit. I am an important part of that creation and evolution. I am expressing the joy of spirit right now as I am presented with unique opportunities for building a life of discovery and blessing. As I breathe in this beautiful day, I know that the peace and harmony of spirit are present here and everywhere. Grateful for this thing called life, I know that I can fully rely on the goodness inherent in every place every time, and every situation, because divine mind, ultimate good, is all-knowing, everywhere present, all-powerful, and it's always offering me the highest and best. Therefore, today is my opportunity to look beyond all appearances to the truth that I know is present. Greater by far is that within me than that which is of the world. I claim a deep blessing for all. I know that peace and love are available to all. I claim for all the knowledge that we are never alone, that Spirit is with all people, as all people, all the time. I know that as the human family lifts one another in love right here and right now, everyone is uniquely and wonderfully blessed. This is the day that the Lord has made, and this is the time when love flows. So, in gratitude, I release this word into the law of mind, which has received it and is acting upon it. It is complete. It is done. And so it is.